The New York Mets could make history tonight if they can clinch at Citi Field. I'll break down what to look out for in Game 4 on today's edition of Locked On Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. This episode is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah, the right state can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. The New York Mets have a chance to make history tonight. It might be a little bit surprising, but the more you think about it, the more it'll make sense. The New York Mets have never had a champagne shower at Citi Field. The ballpark opened in 2009, and across the 16-year history of this ballpark, the Mets have never clinched anything at home. 2015, they went to the playoffs. They clinched that in Cincinnati. They then clinched a spot in the NLCS by beating the Dodgers in Game 5. That game took place in Los Angeles. They were the home team for Game 1 of the NLCS as they won the division. That the Cubs had a better record, but they were the wild card team. The Mets swept the Cubs, so they ended up clinching a spot in the World Series at Wrigley Field. And then, of course, we know what happened in that World Series. 2016, the Mets clinched a playoff berth in Philadelphia. Then they lost to the Giants in the wild card round. Didn't make the playoffs again until 2022. They clinched that in Milwaukee. Then, of course, they lost in the wild card round. And then this year, they clinched a playoff berth in Atlanta. They clinched a spot in the NLDS, winning the wild card series in Milwaukee. So this franchise has never had a celebration in their own ballpark. Obviously, there's been a couple of celebrations against the Mets, the wild card in 2016, the Royals in 2015, the Padres in 2022. The Mets have a chance to get that monkey off their back and finally pop some bottles in Citi Field for themselves if they can win tonight. And that's a nice little carrot to go after. Obviously, the most important thing is advancing. And you're going up against a Phillies team that has been pushing up on what has felt like a championship for a couple of years. 2022, they get so close. They don't get the job done. Last year, they blew it to the Diamondbacks in the NLCS. And this year, they start off the season 44-19, heading into that London series. They were the best team in baseball. Here's the thing that those who are covering this series, particularly the broadcasters that are actually covering these games, AJ Pierzynski, Adam Wainwright, those in the national media, they have painted this series as one that the Phillies should win, or at least where these two teams are headed head-to-head, which I think is a fair enough characterization of where these teams are at, just based on the lineups they have, the starting rotations, and all of it. But if you really were paying attention this season, and if you look at that London series as a sort of line of demarcation, what these teams were heading into the London series and what they've been since, the Mets have been the best team in the National League East, and you can make an argument they've been, if not the best team in baseball, the best team in the National League. That is how good the Mets have been since that London series where they split it with the Phillies. The Phillies took Game 1, so they started their season 45-19, and from that point on, they were 50-48 over their final 98 games. The New York Mets, over their last 98 games, were 61-37. The Mets scored more runs. They hit more home runs. Their pitchers were better ERA as a team than the Phillies. In pretty much every facet, I didn't look at bullpen ERA. That might have been the one place where the Phillies had an edge. Every single facet from the London series on, from June 10th through up until now, the Mets have been a better team than the Philadelphia Phillies. They deserve this. That ball club has shown so much grit, and it was a blast watching what they did in Game 3, beating up on the Phillies, scoring early, scoring late, getting a great pitching performance by Sean Manaea, getting enough out of the bullpen to survive those final 6 outs and notch that victory. It was a great game. But we've seen the Mets jump out, hosting their first playoff game in multiple series across their history, getting that job done. You go back again, 2015. They faced the Dodgers to start it off. They split the first part of that division series, come back home, win game 3 in a rout, lose game 4. It's up to Jacob deGrom in game 5. He gets the job done. Then against the Cubs, obviously it was a sweep. World Series, the Mets lose the first 2 games to the Royals, come home, have that big victory, and that would be the last time they won that season. So we've seen this. We've seen the Mets have that great homecoming in front of their fans. All the excitement that we saw bottled up with all the fans flooding into the ballpark off the 7 line, the grimaces that were all over the place, the OMG signs, everything was immaculate in that game 3. There was nothing that went against the Mets. It was exactly how you would have wanted it if it was in a Hollywood script. Now, this is a team that could absolutely lose game 4, go on the road in game 5, and get the job done. This is a Mets team that has taken the harder road. It would have been a lot easier if they weren't horrible in May, and if they were a decent team, they might have won this division from the Phillies, honestly. But they put themselves in a big hole. They climbed out of it. They took that uphill battle, and they ended up reaching that mountaintop, clinching a playoff berth in the day after the final day of the season. And then they go into the wild card round. They look like they're going to sweep it. They end up dropping game 2, blow that one, nearly lose game 3, come back and win. If the Mets didn't let go of game 2 in this series, they would have already swept. They were in position to win that second game. This is the time to not let up, not let your foot off the gas, to go out in game 4 and beat up on the Phillies again and leave it without a shadow of a doubt who the best team in the National League East was this year. Everyone thinks it was the Phillies because they were great in April and May and in the first half of June. They were awesome. Here's the thing, though. The Phillies brought back a team that has been together basically for the last 2 years. Yes, Trey Turner was not there in 2022. But other than Trey Turner, most of these pieces have been there. Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, Ranger Suarez, all there. Nick Castellanos, Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper, all there. Bryson Stott has been there since 2022, as has Alec Boehm, as has Brandon Marsh. This team, the Phillies, they started this season hot because they had that continuity. They started this season in a similar way to, if you look back at the best season in Mets franchise history, the 1986 Mets, right? They had 84 where they proved that they were really good. 85 come up just short. 86, they just rolled. That's what the beginning of this season looked like for the Phillies. When we were at that London series, at that time, there was talk, if you were covering the game, and I do that for just baseball, cover all 30 teams, we were writing articles talking about the Phillies being able to set a win record for the most wins in MLB history. That's how good they started. They haven't been that for a long time. The Mets have been the better team. And so as a fan, as you're going into this exciting game 4 with the chance to clinch, I would love nothing more than to see the Mets deliver the convincing series victory over Philly. Don't even let them get that hope back to go back to the bank and potentially knock the Mets out of this thing. I believe the Mets are a better team than the Phillies. And they have a chance at, 4 o'clock today instead of 5? Let me make sure the start time so I'm not talking out of school, right? Which is crazy that the Mets, so it is a 5 o'clock start. It'll be a 4 o'clock start if they play on Friday. At least that's what it's supposed to be right now. I think Major League Baseball is making a mistake there, by the way, putting what might be their best series in that afternoon slot, early evening slot. Regardless, the New York Mets have a chance to make it clear that they were the better team in this division, not only better than the Braves, which they've already proven, but that they were better than the Phillies, and they're a team that has a real shot at winning the World Series this year. Go out tonight in front of your home crowd, do it, and then be the first team that gets to pop bottles in that Citi Field clubhouse and celebrate the fact that you're going to the NLCS. How will they get there? Well, the first part of it is going to be getting a great start from José Quintana, who has been nails lately. I want to talk about Quintana, his matchup against the Phillies in just a minute. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can now start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So if you want tonight, throw $5 on the Mets to win the game on the money line, and regardless if they win or lose, you're going to get those $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. You can also play home run props. Maybe you feel Pete Alonso is going to hit one out again. You can go that route. Maybe you like José Quintana to strike out some Phillies tonight. All of that is available for you at FanDuel. And again, $200 in bonus bets, win or lose on your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time. If you want to go to the potential clincher tonight at Citi Field, you can still find some tickets available over at Game Time, the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. And they also have Game Time picks, which will make it easier as they'll filter out the fluff and show you only the incredible deals they have on great seats. So you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. You just see the best possible deals that are out there for you. And you can buy tickets in a matter of seconds. You can get in a minute. I mean, you can find the tickets you want. You can purchase. You'll be all set to go. You can view your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. It's all there for you at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Stay up to date with all the latest in the world of sports when you check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Also, hit that notification bell. I'll be going live after Game 4 tonight. So if you don't want to miss out on that, make sure you are subscribed with that notification bell on, and you will be notified whenever I go live. All right, so let's talk about this game and José Quintana as the Mets starting pitcher. It's crazy to say this, but all of a sudden you look at what Quintana has done this year, and you also look at what he did in his last start. Is there a guy you'd rather have on the mound for this outing? Have we reached the point where you feel more confident with Quintana taking the ball than Luis Severino? It sounds a little bit crazy because Severino definitely has better stuff. You can make an argument too for David Peterson as a better pitcher right now than José Quintana based on stuff. But what José Quintana has that no other pitcher on this staff does is experience. And he was asked about this start prior to Game 3, and he said this will be the biggest start of his career. José Quintana has pitched in the postseason, and he's been very good. I'm not just talking about his last outing. For his career, Quintana has a 2.92 ERA in the playoffs. I believe that was in 6 games up to this point. Now, you look at what Quintana did down the stretch. He was unbelievable at the end of August through September. Over his final 6 starts, José Quintana was actually the best pitcher in baseball based on ERA, had a 0.74 ERA in 36 and a third innings pitched over those 6 starts. So he was averaging 6 innings pitched basically per start and was barely giving up any runs. Goes up against Milwaukee in a do-or-die elimination game for both teams, and he shuts him out for 6 innings. You add that to his end of the season, you're looking at a 0.64 ERA over his last 42 and a third innings pitched. But this isn't just about what he's done recently. José Quintana's season is underappreciated because he had a really bad May. It was either May or April. I'm pretty sure it was May. Had a really bad May, where I think his ERA was over 7. And he had a bad August. But the other 4 months, he was exceptional. And even with that bad August, if you just look at his stats from his final 20 starts of the year, José Quintana pitched to a 3.06 ERA over 111 and 2/3 innings pitched. He was top 10 in baseball among qualified starters in ERA. That is how good Quintana was for the final 2/3 of this season when the Mets went on this crazy run that has him here on the doorstep of the NLCS. So, yes, Is José Quintana the best pitcher on the Mets staff right now when it comes to pure stuff? No, he's probably fourth in this rotation in that regard. But due to his experience, his ability to outthink the competition as a wise veteran, he really has a chance to do something special in this outing. He faced the Phillies 3 times this year. The first 2 times came before the London series, or actually one was before the London series, one was in the London series. Those 2 outings, he did okay. But you look at his most recent outing against the Phillies in September, 7 shutty going up against Aaron Nola, that game that the Mets won in convincing fashion on September 13th. So he just went up against this lineup and carved. And in that outing, only gave up 3 hits, no walks, 4 strikeouts. You look at each individual hitter and their career numbers against Quintana. Nick Castellanos has seen him the most, as they both used to be in the AL Central. For Quintana on the White Sox, for Castellanos on the Tigers. For his career, Castellanos has a 245 average against Quintana, 286 on base, 396 slug. Harper has faced him 21 times. He's 4 for 21, has 1 double, 1 homer, 8 strikeouts in those 21 at-bats. Kyle Schwarber has fared pretty well, a 292 average, 7 for 24, but no walks, so his on-base percentage matches his batting average. 1 home run, 1 double. Trey Turner has not seen Quintana well. 542 OPS against him. Alec Boehm, 3 for 15 with a homer and a double. No walks, 3 strikeouts. JT Realmuto, a 211 average, 4 for 19. 1 home run, 687 OPS. You really look at all of it, it's either guys that haven't seen Quintana much or guys that have seen him and really haven't had a ton of success. So if José Quintana is on top of his game, there is a world where he can match what he did in Milwaukee, and he could go 6 shutout for the Mets. And if he does that again, for one, what an unbelievable contract this was. It's going to be that regardless if you just look at what he did this year on this 2-year deal the Mets signed to prior to the 2023 season. But this would be such a big moment. He already had one. If he could be the pitcher that was on the mound for the clincher to get you to the NLDS, and then again for the clincher to get you to the NLCS, all of a sudden this guy's got some real magic behind him. And who knows, maybe the Mets roll from here and they go into the NLCS and they're cruising and Quintana takes the ball in game 4 and maybe he's the guy again. Who knows? But this is going to be a really interesting start for Quintana because the Phillies are still a battle-tested team that is going to give it their best punch to try to extend this series. And so I would imagine it's going to be very tough to go through, particularly that teeth of the Phillies lineup, those top 4 guys that are so dangerous with Schwarber, Turner, Harper, and Castellanos. And even beyond that, when you get to Boehm, there's some good hitters in this lineup, but Quintana has fared well against them in the past. The Mets have a bullpen that is relatively rested. Reed Garrett has gotten plenty of rest. You could go back to Jose Butto if you wanted to, although his last couple outings have not been great. Although I will say the one against Philly, they didn't really hit the ball hard against him, right? He hit JT Realmuto and he gave up an infield single. Then they went to Edwin Diaz. He didn't really pitch poorly in that outing. It feels like it when you look back at what happened in that game too, but I'd still trust Jose Butto in a big spot. I don't think I trust him as much as Ryan Stanek, who only threw 13 pitches to get 4 outs, so he might be good to go. I think Phil Maton's the guy to stay away from because he's sort of struggled in this series, but you have Edwin Diaz rested. If you have a lead, you can always go to David Peterson. So let's just say Jose Quintana cruises through 6. Maybe you go Reed Garrett for the 7th. And let's just say 8th inning, you're going to see Schwarber and Harper. It's the top of the lineup. Maybe go to David Peterson in that spot to face the lefties with Edwin Diaz ready in reserve if it gets to Castellanos. The Mets have a lot of different ways they can play this, but they do have a rested staff for the most part. And they have a guy in Quintana that has been really good for a large portion of this season. He's been on another level over his last 7 starts. And you feel pretty good with him taking the ball against a guy in Ranger Suarez that has had the opposite season where he started off amazing and has really struggled over the final third of the season. So what's that going to look like for the Mets? Can they get on Ranger Suarez? And what happens if they do? I'll talk about that in the next segment. First, though, another word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Booking.com, Booking.yeah. Explore those USA cities you've always secretly wanted to learn more about. Of course, we're talking about your baseball rival city, and this goes to a Game 5. Maybe you want to go out there, support the New York Mets and Philly. You can head over to Booking.com to book your stay, or maybe you want to look a little further ahead. Who knows? The Padres are a win away from the NLCS themselves. Beautiful place to be this time of year. Maybe you want to head over to San Diego for the start of that series. Booking.com is the place to go to book your stay with hotels, bed and breakfasts, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more. Booking.com is the place to find your perfect stay, even in your baseball rival city this postseason. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today at Booking.com, Booking.yeah. If you're an everyday listener to the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks for the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. You can also take part in our Locked On Mets sign photo giveaways and get the lineup graphic sent to your phone each day so you know the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find a link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Ranger Suarez will take the ball for the Phillies in Game 4. They had the option, if they wanted to go to Zach Wheeler on short rest. Instead, they're going to stick with Suarez, but Rom Thompson did say that anybody or everybody is available in Game 4 because, well, you face elimination. So that really does add an extra layer to this game, but specifically on Suarez. You're looking at a pitcher that was in the Cy Young conversation nearly through June. Through June 25th, Suarez had a 1.83 ERA across 16 starts. He was exceptional. He was basically carrying over what he did in the playoffs last year and what he's done the last couple years in the playoffs. As Ranger Suarez, I think I saw a stat. He's like top 5 all time with a certain amount of innings pitched. When it comes to postseason ERA, he's got a 1.62 postseason ERA. So he has been an absolute dog in October. You can't count him out and just say, oh, yeah, he's been bad lately. He's going to be bad in this outing. But he has been bad lately. Okay, you look at what he did over his final 11 starts this season. He did have a sore back that he had to pitch through. He pitched to a 6.54 ERA down the stretch, and batters hit 309 against him. Now, the Mets faced him on September 21st. He went 5 innings, allowed 2 runs. That was basically the line that he put up in all of his starts against the Mets this year. There was 3 of them. One of them, he went 5 2/3. There was one of them where the 2 runs that he gave up were unearned, but all of them were basically 2 runs allowed, got through 5, didn't get through 6. If that's the roadmap in this game, I think the Mets can win a game like that where Quintana matches them and then you win it late. That's certainly in the cards. But for the Mets here, you really want to jump out to a big lead to force the Phillies into a tough decision because Zach Wheeler being on reserve to pitch that Game 5, that's something that you want to avoid. And while you just want to clinch this thing right now and win it in 4 games, you have to take in mind that Bryce Harper's a damn good baseball player who's got a legacy on the line, who very well could have a big game after a pretty bad game in Game 3. Same thing goes with Trey Turner, Kyle Schwarber, Nick Castellanos. I mean, that's a good ball club that has gotten very close and has played in a lot of big games. So they're not just going to completely shrivel. They're going to really give you a tough punch, I think. You're going to have to win a really hard baseball game. And you wouldn't want it any other way, honestly. But forcing the Phillies to exhaust the tank to win this game will help you if you get to a Game 5 or if you need to win a Game 5. I think the Mets have all the ability to go on the road and beat even Zach Wheeler again at Citizens Bank. They'll have Kodai Senga. They'll have Luis Severino fully rested. They'll have the arms to do it, but it would be a lot better if it gets to that point. Zach Wheeler needed to throw 75 pitches on short rest out of the bullpen, and that's the only reason that the Phillies got there. Well, then you tip your cap to Wheeler and you go out and you beat Christopher Sanchez in Game 5. Getting on Suarez early will put the Phillies in a really tough spot where they might have to go to Wheeler in the 2nd or 3rd inning, potentially. And then, yeah, if Wheeler holds up and he's amazing in that circumstance, all right, again, you do the best you can. You exhaust him as much as possible so you don't have to see him in Game 5. And you take another crack at it in that final game. but you also could carry the momentum of an early outburst against Suarez. And if Quintana is good, holds that lineup at bay, you set your pitching up and your bullpen holds up, you might just win the game and beat both Suarez and Wheeler, even if Wheeler was great. So it's really going to be imperative to take advantage of these at-bats against Suarez. I think they're going to be some real opportunities for the Mets to score runs. You look at the career numbers against Suarez, there's some guys who have really struggled for the Mets, other guys who've been very good. Pete Alonso, he falls into the struggle bucket a little bit, 2 for 17. So that's a 118 batting average. Both of his hits were doubles. But an interesting note, he's walked 8 times in 25 plate appearances. So he has a 400 on base percentage against Ranger Suarez. So it's not like he sees the ball terrible. Who knows how many of those outs were hard hit baseballs? I think Alonso's probably better against Suarez than that batting average would suggest. Now, Brandon Nimmo, 3 for 25. That's not great. All those hits were singles. I don't think he sees the ball very well against Ranger, but I also don't think you can take him out of the lineup because, again, if they go to Zach Wheeler, you don't want to burn a bat just to shield Nimmo from this matchup. And Nimmo is locked in at the plate right now, so I think you keep things status quo. Mark Vientos, 3 for 15 against Suarez with the home run and a double. Francisco Alvarez, 1 for 7 with 3 strikeouts, but also that one hit was a homer. And then you get to the guys that have actually thrived against Ranger Suarez. The first one being Francisco Lindor, who is 5 for 16 against them with a double and a homer, 316 batting average, 389 on base, 563 slug. Jose Iglesias is 6 for 8 in his career against Ranger Suarez with 2 doubles. Looking at that, I wonder if most of that came this year. Probably not all of it because I can't imagine he got 8 at-bats in 2 games. And, I mean, I guess he probably faced him in the London series. They were going to Iglesias at the time as a platoon with Jeff McNeil. So I imagine a lot of those hits came this year. So you'd think he's probably pretty locked in and actually provides Pete Alonso with some pretty good protection. Then you get to Starling Marte, 6 for 19, 316 average, 381 on base. Not a ton of power numbers against Suarez, but he sees lefty as well. He's getting all the clutch hits, it seems, this postseason run. And then you got Tyrone Taylor, only 7 at-bats, but 2 hits, 1 strikeout. And I think JD Martinez will be in there at DH. He's 2 for 9 in his career against Suarez with 1 walk, 3 strikeouts, 1 double. So not a ton of plate appearances against him, but overall, okay numbers. I'm sure he'd see him pretty fine as well. So you look at a Mets team that has fared pretty well when they face lefties this year. A guy in Suarez who had opposing hitters batting .309 against him for his final 11 starts, had an ERA over 6 against the guy in Quintana that has been absolutely sensational over his last 7 starts and very good over his final 20, or I guess 21 leading into this. I think the Mets have the edge when it comes to the pitching matchup. They got the home field advantage. The crowd's going to be behind them. And again, they have a chance to do something that has never been done before. The New York Mets can clinch something at Citi Field, hopefully the first of many clinching opportunities for the Mets, not just potentially this year, but into the future. You got to feel great about where this franchise is, not to just take this from a micro perspective of focusing on this game to a macro perspective, but it is something that I came away with today as I watched Steve Cohen, on that video that you might have seen on social media, greeting fans outside of the ballpark. You think about where this franchise was in 2020, the final year under the Wilpons, the COVID season, Brodie Van Wagenen, and the adventure that was his tenure as the Mets GM. And now you look at where they're at, and it's been 4 pretty crazy years under Steve Cohen. There was a couple collapses. 21, they were obviously in first place until the deadline, fell apart. Braves won the World Series. 2022, there was the collapse down the stretch to the Braves where they lost the division. 2023, just a year that you want to forget about, a horrible season. But here they are, year 4 of that 3 to 5 year window, and the Mets have their best baseball team in a decade. They have a farm system that's on the rise. They have a president of baseball operations that clearly knows what he's doing, and he has unlimited resources with Steve Cohen as the owner. So I think this franchise is going to clinch something at home at some point, whether it's this year or not. But boy, would it be sweet to see the Mets popping the champagne in Citi Field, getting to celebrate with their fans. It's going to be a great game to watch tonight, and I will have a live stream regardless of the result right after. I did talk about this on our live stream earlier tonight as I'm recording this now, but yesterday, as you might have listened to it, I am in South Florida. I am fortunate that I'm pretty far outside of where this hurricane's supposed to make an impact on my state. Definitely feel horrible for the people that are going through it right now in the center of the state. But as it relates to programming for this show, there is a world where I might lose power or something like that. So if that's the case, and I still have service, I'll try to send out a tweet or something. If you don't see from me tonight, tomorrow, that's what's going on. Otherwise, same thing that you've gotten throughout this playoff run. I'm going to do a live stream after the game. If there is a game 5 to preview, I will do a show for the morning talking about that. Otherwise, we might just do something in general to talk about where the Mets are at for a day podcast on Thursday. So we'll try to keep things rolling here. I appreciate all of you who continue to tune into the show every day. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Trying to get to 11,000 subscribers, I guess, by the end of this postseason run. Appreciate all of you who continue to subscribe. If you are listening on the audio side, follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. You can follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listener, your first watch every day, not for your second watch. Head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel covering everything in the world of sports. Talking about Locked On Sports Today, the only channel giving you coverage of all sports 24/7 on YouTube with our local hosts from each team, league-wide hosts from each league. Find Locked On Sports Today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.